The first one is the differentiation of the secular spheres. The second meaning is the decline of religious beliefs and practice. And the third, which I introduced, was the privatization of religion. Taylor has a third different one, which is this precisely neutral säkularität. The third one, the privatization of religion, I found it necessary to bring, because empirically we see around the world a clear process of deprivatization of religion. Religion has become a public question, a public issue everywhere. Not only because religious people enter the public sphere, but because religion itself becomes a public issue. And because it is so built into precisely the European secularist understanding of religion as a private affair, that the moment it enters the public sphere, it endangers the public sphere. So this notion that somehow religion is precisely because it is either intolerant or because it leads to political conflict that are impossible to solve or to come to terms with, precisely because, especially in Germany, it is linked to the notion that religious Wahrheitsansprüche are the ones that cannot be discussed. They are absolute, therefore they are non-negotiable, therefore they endanger a democratic public sphere. And it is again this precisely kind of assumption that I directed my critical reading, that religion can enter the public sphere and contribute to actually a more democratic public sphere. Well, as I said, secularization won, but not in the way in which we sociologists understood it, because the way we understood it was secularization one is the process of differentiation, which is a historical process in Europe. And then we expect that other societies are going to the same process of differentiation. And when then they'll go through, they are not modern yet. In this sense, the Taylor gives us the possibility of understanding secularization is, yes, in Europe it took the form of the establishment of the immanent frame, and it was necessary to go through this process of differentiation. But once established, this immanent frame is precisely the frame that allows all kinds of different possibilities of belief, unbelief, and so for me it is important. There is a globalization of the immanent frame, clearly in terms of the cosmic order. Science is everywhere the same. The universities everywhere basically are organized exactly in the same way. Also, the model of these horizontal societies, be it the polity, the state, the market, the public sphere, these are also everywhere. They are not democratic necessarily in our liberal sense, but they are democratic in the Tocquevillian sense of egalitarian, and this is this precisely horizontal. And the third one is a more problematic one, which is the notion of these individual rights. But I think that there is a process of sacralization of human rights, which I think is the way in which this moral order of the rights of individuals to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, it doesn't mean precisely that once we accept those principles, that we are going to understand those principles the same. Nobody challenges today gender equality, nobody. But of course, what gender equality means for a Western feminist or for a Muslim feminist are radically different things. So the idea is, I think there is enough, even at the level which is most problematic of the moral individual order, there is enough, I think, a global consensus emerging around what I would call the sacralization of human rights. It's contested, especially when we Westerners think that we know what human rights mean, and we use our Western legal means to impose our own conception of what human rights. So there are all kinds of, and because it comes this discourse, which all kinds of political structures which are problematic. So in this sense, secularization one, I think, is a globalizing process. But precisely within this, there are all kinds of possibilities of religious dynamics. Europe is clearly one in which the unchurching of the population, to a certain extent, the very serious crisis of ecclesiastical authority, of institutions, but also of dogma or the faith, precisely these truths, the way they have been transmitted. But we see I always found myself a European in America, because it took me so long to understand how American society can be so religious. It means it's not yet modern. This was my idea. It's not yet, had no Aufklärung, had no illustration. But of course, the founders of America were simply members of the illustration. They were very, very clear. So once I understood it, but then because I spent so much time discussing the European position to the Americans and the American to the Europeans, and I realized that we need to go beyond Europe and America. The world today is a global one, and we have to look for dynamics elsewhere. So that's why I brought the dynamics of Quebec and Brazil as two post-Catholic societies, but one has gone in the direction of Western Europe, the other much more of the United States. And also China and India, to see two very different ways of reacting to secularization one, right? One which sees secularization one demands that we get rid of all our religious traditions, while the other says, no, we can use our religious traditions precisely to bring secularization one according to our own understanding. So the Indian use of religion as a resource to establish its own independence vis-a-vis Western colonialism. So, but again, I see these dynamics, the dynamic of pluralization on the one hand, versus dynamic of homogenization, whether it is religious or secular. Because for me, what is so striking about the European condition is that we have converted from a homogeneous religiosity to a homogeneous secularity. And instead of bringing what should be a pluralization of faith and unfaith options. And this is what there is not. There is a kind of, even when we are secular, we are so homogeneously secular that there should be many other forms of being secular. I think that questioning what secularity means, rather than accepting secularity simply meaning having abandoned religion and just without religion is what, no, I mean, there is this famous anecdote in Northern Ireland, somebody crossing from a Catholic to a Protestant neighborhood, and somebody hands up, what are you, Protestant or Catholic? No, I'm an atheist, but which one? Protestant or Catholic atheist? So exactly, so secular, but which one? Which secular? Are you a post-Christian, post-Catholic, post-Protestant, post-Confucian, post-secular doesn't mean anything. Secular is this neutral, and it has to be filled with something. It has to be filled with something. Secular is precisely this, if you wish, empty in the positive sense, that undefined. The thing can be defined through some particular conviction or principle or faith or truth.